Hey guys, it's Gracie. Today I'm doing my August wrap up. Very excited. I read 9 books, which is awesome because like halfway through the month I had only read like 3, and I was like, usually I do most of my reading at the beginning of the month, so I was a little worried that I wouldn't do super well this month, but I actually ended up reading quite a bit, so I'm really excited. So let's get into the first book I read, and that is A Midsummer Night's Dream by William Shakespeare. I give this a 3.75. I really enjoyed this book. I read it for school, but it wasn't required. Like, we had a list of books that we could choose from, and this is what I chose. I enjoyed this book. I actually thought it was really funny, which is weird because, well, not weird, but I just thought that the humor would be lost on me since this was written so long ago. It was published in 1600. It was a lot shorter than I expected because, you know, you buy this book and you're like, oh, that's short, but it's actually even shorter than it looks because the beginning is like notes about Shakespeare, the end is like historical context, so this middle part is literally the whole thing. I think each act was like 2 scenes, which is crazy because I think Romeo and Juliet has like 5 scenes an act around, or 3, I don't remember. But there's a really funny Romeo and Juliet, funny, odd, I don't know, both Romeo and Juliet reference at the end of this book, like the very end, and that was kind of odd and funny, like I said. And the characters were very stupid, which I feel like is, from what I've read of Shakespeare, which is only 2 of his books, but I feel like that's maybe a little bit of a theme in his books. So that's the first book I read. Second book I read was The Raven King by Nora Sakavic. I loved this book. It's the second book in the All for the Game series. I listened to it on audiobook because I think the audiobooks are really good. I know that's like kind of an unpopular opinion. Some people really don't like them, but I gave it a full 5 stars. The characters in this series are so amazing. The writing, it was great. The plot was super interesting, even more interesting than the first one, which is weird because usually when there's trilogies or series, the second book is like the boring one called second book slump, but the second one was really good, and it was so beautifully gay and so good. And to follow that up, I read the third book, the final book in the trilogy, The King's Men by Nora Sakavic. It was also extremely amazing. I gave it 5 stars. The ship is so amazing and adorable. I've just been reading fan fiction for their ship for like since I finished it, and that's fun. I'm really sad that it's over. And overall, this series, I think it had really good writing, really good characters and diversity, and I really loved the audiobook performance. I thought it was more engaging than a lot of audiobooks I've listened to. The fourth book I read was a graphic novel, and that is Laura Dean Keeps Breaking Up With Me by Mariko Tamaki and Rosemary Valero O'Connell. I really enjoyed this book. I gave it a 4.5. I read it for the Rainbow Court Book Club, which is a book club that is on Twitter that I'm a part of, and we read an LGBT book every month. But it's only, this is the 3rd month I believe, and the 2 months before I had already read those books, so that was sad because I couldn't participate. So I was really excited to participate. I got to talk to some people a little bit about it, and I just really enjoyed this book. It was beautifully gay, beautifully queer. I really loved the art and the story. It had very realistic relationships, both romantically and platonically, and like all of the types of relationships, I guess. And it was a little sad, which I loved, because if everything's super happy, I don't feel like I connect to it as much. I don't feel like it's as realistic, but I really enjoyed this one. Next, I read Stargirl by Jerry Spinelli. I gave this a 3.5 star rating. I thought that the characters were really fun in this, but they were also extremely unrealistic. The whole kind of plot of this book, not to spoil anything, but the plot of this book is there's a new girl, she calls herself Stargirl. Everybody kind of like goes back and forth between hating her and worshiping her for her uniqueness, her weirdness, but She is very manic pixie dream girl, very over the top, and the lack of uniqueness in the rest of the characters is very unrealistic to me, because I think all high schools and schools in general have like the popular people and maybe the people that seem more uniform and more close together, but you still know the difference in them. They're like, oh, that one really likes this, that one likes this, and no one really hates them for it. I don't know, I just thought it was a lot maybe unrealistic. I really didn't like the narrator very much, the boy who's telling the story. This plot was slow, and I didn't like the writing either. What did I write? Okay, I don't know what that says. So yeah, overall, I think this is maybe for newer readers, people who aren't into super complex books, because the writing was a little easier and it was just a fun story, but I didn't really get anything out of it because these are things I already definitely knew and I think most people know, so I don't know why it was such a huge thing in this book. Next book I read was Wicked Saints by Emily A. Duncan. This is the Owl Crate edition of it. I read this for Owl Crate-a-thon. I really loved it. I gave it 4.25 stars. I thought it was so good. I'm not a fantasy person, so when Owl Crate usually almost always comes with a fantasy book, I'm like, oh, I'm not really interested in that. But then I end up reading them and I'm like, oh my god, this is so good. So I think I just have to be in a certain mood for fantasy, or I have to push myself to read it, because I've had bad experiences with like ACOTAR, basically that series. I loved the magic system. I thought it was so interesting. The writing was really good. The characters were super unique, and I really need the sequel, like, so bad. Ruthless Gods, like, I want it, because this ended so good, and I've never, like, within the past year or so, maybe more, haven't wanted to read a sequel of a fantasy so bad in my life. So I highly recommend this one. The next book I read was also for Owl Crate-a-thon, and I read The Tea Jargon Society by Katie O'Neill. Basically, Owl Crate-a-thon had a couple challenges, but my main goal for Owl Crate-a-thon was to get through some of my Owl Crate books that have just been sitting there because they're all fantasy. And I ended up getting through Wicked Saints, and this one I read because it's the shortest Owl Crate book I own. I gave this 4.25, just like Wicked Saints. I thought it was super adorable, very diverse, but it was like short. Like, you can see this, and I think they could have had 2 volumes in one. I think that the next volume could have been like mixed in this. The art was beautiful, and I think it's good for pretty much all ages. Anyone can really read this. I think you could even read this to like younger children, for sure. But I just think, like, I don't mind graphic novels being short, but if not a whole lot of plot happens, I think you should make them a little bit longer if it's all character driven. That's just my opinion for graphic novels. So I think I'll probably read the second one, maybe get it from the library or something if that's possible, because I don't see myself needing to own this series, I guess, even though I'll keep this one, but I don't see myself like buying the next ones. Next I read Her Royal Highness by Rachel Hawkins. I gave this a 4.25 stars. This is a contemporary, and I think in my last haul I said that I found this at the bookstore or the thrift store for $1.50, and this is a new release, like it came out this year. I enjoyed this book. I also gave this a 4.25. I think I had an issue with 4.25. I think I generally have an issue with giving books 4.25. But this is a queer hate-to-love romance set in Scotland, which is amazing, with also some royalty mixed in there. I thought it was really funny. But I haven't read a book in a really long time that made me laugh so much. So that was really refreshing. I really loved the friendships. The hate-to-love was really good. I loved the Scotland setting. The royalty was really interesting because I don't know a lot about royalty, but it's really fun to kind of learn through the story. The very last book I read in August was The Prince and the Dressmaker by Jen Wang. This is another graphic novel. I gave it a 4.5 stars. I think that it has a really adorable romance, really great wrap. It had really beautiful art and it was very atmospheric. I think the thing that really like put me off on it is it was a little unrealistic in terms of LGBT in older past medieval, is it medieval times? I don't know when this technically took place. I think it's like Paris at the dawn of the modern age. So for that time period, I didn't think it was super realistic with the reactions of the people finding out that they were LGBT. Obviously, there were different reactions that were positive and negative, and the negative ones I think were more realistic, unfortunately. But some of the overly positive ones were nice, but I think there were almost too many of those to be realistic. Like, I feel like I'm hating on this book for being positive about LGBT people, but I don't know, like, it just didn't feel right to me. That really sucks. Like, I wanted a happy ending, but at the same time I didn't necessarily like the happy ending, and I don't know what to say about it because I feel bad, and I feel like, I don't know, I feel weird about not thinking that this is realistic and not liking that this ended happy. So yeah, those are the 9 books I read this August, which is so exciting because I didn't think I would get to 9 books. So there you go. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you haven't already, please like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see y'all later. Bye!